me. Thank you for coming out. I would just like to say thank you, Jen, AEB. We came out last year and co-hosted the event, and we couldn't say no this year.
And now we'd like to welcome back up our spooky moderator for the night, Jen Hutchins. She's worked on everything from Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters International, Haunted Collector, A&E's Fear Buried Alive with director Eli Roth, Travel Channel's Trending Fear, Mar Vista's Most Likely to Die, and much more. So let's welcome her up here to get the night kicked off.
Thank you. I first really want to thank you so much to all the AEB volunteers that make this happen. It's really stepped up a huge level with all these wonderful people, and I'm very picky who I have around me. I have no patience anymore for people that do a bad job. So just know I'm giving all the people in this room and on Zoom a resume referral that they would not be a volunteer here if they didn't do a good job. So you already have a referral for all these people here. We've been doing this for 9 years. I thought I was just going to start a little networking group, and it turned into something. I guess that's what happens when a producer has, a motivation to create a community. I was going to say time, but I don't have time. I do this because I don't sleep. But I wanted a community that we could still connect when we're in a hotel, traveling on set, and losing our family every time we start a new project. So this is a consistent thing. Jacob is our Zoom moderator. He is the Jen of Zoom. Can you see the similarity? We go way back. We've known each other from the Producers Guild for a long time, and used to do the moderate producing stuff with Producers Guild stuff as well. And now we're doing it for AEB, and maybe we'll do it for Producers Guild again too. Okay, so I made a little rant about producing in the horror industry. I first want to start off with film. My very first film that I started as a coordinator and then a production manager, it was called Most Likely to Die, but then it turned out that I was most likely to die behind the scenes. So we shot it in Topanga Canyon, and first off, the coffee truck could not make it up the very steep hill. By the time they got to the top of the very steep hill, to make really fun coffee drinks for our crew, they blew out their parking brake. And as they were rolling down the hill, I was walking over with the PA and the line producer. I was the production manager. And we were holding this truck from falling down the hill. And we're like, wait a minute. So if it does fall, though, it's definitely running me over. The generator went out during a night scene. So we had to cancel the night scene because it's all lights. And I slept there at the house waiting for the new generator, calling crews I knew in the hills that might have an extra generator I could borrow. And then it culminated where the owner of the house had signed a location release, and the next day we had an angry guy show up and say, "Why are you filming in my house?" And we said, "What?" And it turns out that the guy that signed the location release was the renter. So, advice to anybody, you got to get the owner's signature. They get mad. That guy ended up getting booted from his rental. I felt very bad. We had to pay off the owner so we could keep shooting. I think he got a producer title. So, Then I feared death as we tried to kill Chris Angel 1,000 times on Chris Angel Mind Freak on A&E. And then we tried to kill real people with Fear Buried Alive on A&E by burying them in coffins underground on live television for 2 hours. But nothing compares to real life. Shooting Ghost Hunters International, Haunted Collector, and Trending Fear, all the really crazy stuff happens behind the scenes. So my car's been blessed by a priest in Hawaii. I was slimed in Mississippi. I heard disembodied voices when I was with the world's leading demonologist in Virginia. I grew up in a neighborhood like the one in Poltergeist. We moved a penny with our minds once in a friend's house, and we actually called the police on ghosts. None of this is a lie, by the way. I have also found Hitler's ghost in Miramar, Argentina. And we created a tourist destination at a fortress in Peru in Lima. Entertainment business creates economy. I may have owed a warlord in the Philippines a favor when we got our gear through customs to shoot a ghost story. And I was told by a psychic that he did not want to reveal my future, and this was right after I might have pissed off a top Santero in Puerto Rico when we were doing a case of the haunted coconuts. I'm not making this shit up. I broke my neck in 2 places a month later, going 80 miles per hour in a car that flipped 5 times. I called into work while I was on morphine and said I can't make it to the ghost hunt in Cleveland. And then 2 weeks later, went to go produce more magic with a neck brace on. That is a little bit of my ghost stories. There's more, but I will leave you guys with that. So next up, I want to announce award-winning writer, director, New Yorker. She's known for her work with Unbound with David Bowie and her psychological thriller that had its world premiere at the Austin Film Festival. Carolynn, Cecilia, come on up. So how you doing? You're in the hot spot now.
I know. I'm doing all right. I've slept for almost the past 24 hours. Our world premiere was very exciting, and I'm learning how to market a film without a marketing budget. And so it was really nice to have a nap and then come here.
You know, that's brutal because when we started making our films, they said, don't worry about the marketing budget. And now they're like, worry about the marketing budget.
Yeah.
So that's some bullshit.
Yeah. Everything at this point is just out of pocket. So I'm really excited about that. I probably never will retire. So that's cool.
Yeah, 401k, what the hell is that?
I've never heard of it.
I've never heard of it either. But if you see him, let me know. I'm looking for him.
Right.
So how did Spite go? The movie's called Spite, and tell me about
Yes.
Spite. It's a psychological thriller.
I tend to think of it as a psychological drama with horror elements, is kind of the way that I push it. But essentially, Spite is about a woman named Joanna who has to go back to her childhood home in Pittsburgh when her estranged mother dies. And while she's there, she starts to re-experience the abuse of her youth. So it's like a Mommy Dearest meets Invisible Man.
I feel like real life is scarier than fiction. And
Yes.
I watched it, and it's horrifying and very well done.
Thank you very much.
How did all of this get started? What's your story? Tell me your whole
Yeah.
life story, but in like 3 minutes.
So my mother is a bitch. Essentially, so I've just been a writer for a really long time, and I had submitted this story to NYC Midnight. And if anybody is familiar with them, you sign up and they give you like 48 hours to write a story based on 3 criteria. And that particular one was I had to write a ghost story about every woman, and there was a third thing that I have now completely forgotten about. And so I wrote this short story, submitted it, and then I was like, oh my God, I think that could be a film. And it's something that stuck with me. So I've been a script supervisor for 10 years in New York City. I've worked on film, commercials, television.
Some pretty big ones.
Yeah, some big ones, yeah. But always in the background, making my own work, short films, being hired to direct other things. And I knew that it was time for me to make a feature. The WGA was about to strike. SAG was going to follow. And I was like, oh, this might be the right time because once everybody gets back to work, I'm going to be so booked and busy. The industry is just going to be amazing, which of course we all know is not what happened at all. So I was like, I really want to make my feature now. And so I took my short story and I turned it into a feature, and I found funding and I just kind of dived into it. But I really based it on what it was like to grow up with a mother who probably shouldn't have been a mother, and in an environment that was very precarious and very dangerous, and how as you get older, people often think that you will age out of all of your traumas and your feelings about child abuse, and it doesn't happen at all. It actually comes at you in waves. It doesn't matter how many therapists you get, but there are times
You know
where
the average age somebody seeks therapy for their childhood trauma? There's an average age.
I have no idea, no.
50.
That's a little too late. I recommend starting a lot earlier. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this because as the most recent statistics are around 2023 is a little less than 600,000 children are abused or neglected each year in really violent situations. And so I wanted to have a conversation about what it's like to be an adult, what it's like to go back into a scenario in which this is where your abuse happened. And yes, your abuser is gone, but what they did to you is not. And I wanted to have a character that you could watch just over the course of a few days and watch them they thought that they were out of it, and now they're being pulled back in, and there's this force within the house that thinks she's still a child and she is still in need of discipline.
So you shot this during the strikes. Was that easy?
Oh, it was so easy. Yeah, all of the SAG paperwork was super simple, and everything came in exactly when I needed it to. No. We waited up until the very end. We never got to rehearse because our SAG paperwork was taking so long. We got our waiver, but still. So it became this thing of we shot for 10 days in Pittsburgh with the tiniest little budget, and we just kind of had to jump into it. Luckily, I kept my script really tight, mostly one location, very few actors, and I had talked to my actress quite a bit, but I think we had only one opportunity on Zoom to read, for the actors to read and talk, but we never really got a proper rehearsal.
So one thing you should never say to me is I have an indie film, low budget. It's going to be really, really fun. Do you want to work on it? So how fun is it to work on a low budget indie film?
Well, luckily, I'm not full of shit, and I would never tell you it's going to be fun. So there's that. I guess I don't even... Fun doesn't even factor in for me. I just love it so much, being a writer-director, that I'm very honest. I'm very direct, and I'm like, it's actually going to be really hard, but I'm going to be there with you, and you're going to be there with me, and we're going to get through it together, and at the end, we're going to go, oh my God, can you believe what we just accomplished? And that's kind of my main goal, is just we're going to grow, we're going to learn, we're going to push boundaries, and we're going to come out on the other side, and we're either going to like each other or we're not. And if we don't, I'll write a movie about you.
It's kind of like when you go through something like really horrific, like, I don't know, you like motorcycles and you almost die, but then you go out and do it again. Or, childbirth, and you're like, hell no, never again. And then you go do it again. I guess that is what sort of indie filmmaking is, because it is such a high when you're done.
Oh, yeah, we were done, and I was done. I was like, I never want to speak to anybody again. But, of course, if you give me money tomorrow, I'm like, let's go. I think it's an addiction. It's probably really unhealthy. I don't know that it's the right way to process trauma, but it's the one I chose.
No, I mean, I'm not dissing indie film. It is really fun and rewarding, and, hell, I do this group which supports indie film, so I better be supportive of it. So I'm just kidding, guys. Don't use it against me. How hard was it to get your investors? Tell us about how you got your investors.
So the first investor came from my house, meaning I think at that point the WGA had officially been on strike. I've made a lot of really weird decisions in my life, again, probably based on trauma, but one of the smartest things I ever did was I'm going to marry me a cis man who's got a comfortable job so that I can do whatever I want to do, and he's going to love and support me. So just so you know, if you're ever thinking about it. So he was actually, my husband was my first investor, and it just got us started. And then someone that he worked with was married to a woman who wanted to get into producing. So they came on as our second investor, and we went into production with $80,000.
And that's not all you spent, though.
No, I waited. After we wrapped, I cried for a couple weeks, and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, and now I'm rested. And I went back out, and I got another 30 plus from a third investor to cover post-production. And so now, it's just Ubers and festival fees and buying cocktails for people I like, and that's just what's driving up our budget at this point. But, we're keeping it very, very low, and I'm proud enough to say that you would not know that our budget is that low.
It's a good idea in today's marketplace, because the marketplace does not care if you spent $20 million or $80,000. It's going to pay you what you get paid. It will go viral or it will take a shit. So the less you spend and the better it looks is the game here.
Yeah. Everything for me, and this is how I've always been, is you give me a little bit, and then I'm going to watch you. I'm going to show you how I will elevate it. And so I personally like the challenge, not to say that if anybody wants to give me more money that I wouldn't like that also. But I just kind of look at it like, okay, this is what we've got. Here's every favor that I have been holding in my pocket for the past few years. Here's how I can be really charming and funny. And do you hate child abuse? Would you like to give us some money? And you kind of just roll with whatever it comes at you, because the film is the thing. And I'm willing to, I will not sleep. I'm all sweat equity. I'm all bartering and favors and so on.
Well, in these films, we got to think of them like products that help other products. So you're having a movie screening, and businesses that relate to the audience of your screening can come participate. And instead of giving their sponsor money to buying ads on the internet to generic people, they can come support. If it's something that's helping somebody psychologically, maybe there is a drug that isn't bad for you, which I don't know which ones are yet, but
some are fun though, right?
They have a lot of money. Big pharma, so maybe if you guys know of one, let us know that doesn't kill you. And yeah, they come support your movie, and our contractors, they can come tell people they build things and make good counters and stuff. You can think outside the box with stuff.
Absolutely, we got most of our locations for free. There's an ice cream shop in our film and I made sure we got Big Al's Cone Zone got a wide establishing shot. So if you're in Pittsburgh and you want to go get some ice cream, but that was completely donated to us, and it was the kindness of people in Pittsburgh and the kindness of people that we came across that really made our film possible.
Yeah, the Fortress of Peru that I was mentioning, they were kind of really hard to deal with, like to get the Ghost Hunters team there. But then when that episode aired, it became a tourist attraction. Like buses of people started going there. They wanted to see where the Ghost Hunters went. So, giving a location sometimes can really pay off. What's next for you?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to sleep some more. But we really have just started our festival run. So it's just me on the ground again. I can't really name the festivals that have reached out to say, hey, you're in our finals and so on. I have to hold off on that. But I was accepted into Stowe Story Labs, and so I'm workshopping my TV pilot. Thank you very much, which takes place in Texas. Who knew? And then I've started writing my next feature, which is really exciting. And just kind of survival and trying to see what happens in the industry. I don't know how it is for everyone here, but I know, New York City, we're still trying to recover from COVID. We're still trying to recover from the strikes. We're still trying to put it all back together. I think I'll be script supervising potentially a J. Crew thing when I get back to New York, but I'll also be at the American Film Market in November, trying to learn how to sell a film when the market is in the toilet. And helping other people. It's one of the things that I love about script supervising, is that I get to help other directors, I get to read a variety of scripts, and I get to stay on set and in production, which is rare for most directors. You're usually not on set unless you have a production going on. So as a script supervisor, I get to be on set all the time.
Shooting in Pittsburgh with the tradition of George Romero and all those fun films that were shot there, did you find that a little bit more accommodating because of the city's history with horror?
I definitely found it very accommodating, and so I would assume that that's why everyone that we ran into was really exciting. There were some teenage girls that I cast in the film because I just happened to run into them at a Denny's. And I was like, oh, I need teenage girls. And they were gossiping in their table, and I was listening, and I was like, I need girls who do that. And so I was able to bring them into the film in that way. But everyone was very kind and supportive. But also there were people that I knew because I had been script supervising and traveling around. I mean, I've script souped on the side of a mountain in Montana. I've been in the heat of South Carolina. So I've just made relationships all over the place. But definitely Pittsburgh was very welcoming and very warming. And it's different than New York. New York, the police ride up and you're like, oh my God, what is this gonna be? And in Pittsburgh, they're just like, hey, what you doing? And you're just, oh, okay, cool. All right, see you later, bye. And that was really, really nice. I really enjoyed that.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What attracts you to genre filmmaking?
So for me, this particular story, what could it be other than horrifying? Like it just felt like the right genre for it. And just to give you all an idea, that you do not see any children hurt in the film. It really is from the adult perspective and her kind of reverting back to some childlike states. And so I also have like a deep respect for the genre, and there was going into it. Like even today, I still feel a lot of pressure of I don't want to disappoint the horror fans, but I am more of a cerebral psychological person. So for me, I'm like the Babadook and Saint Maud, and I love when there's this different like undertone of something cultural and some kind of social consciousness behind a film. And so that was something that I have been connecting to, and that's what I really wanted to pay homage to with the particular film. But also, I mean, we shot in a 4:3 ratio. Because I wanted it to feel like an old television, and that she hasn't been back to her home in so long. And so all of her memories would have this kind of like 80s, 90s feel to them. And so when you watch our film, like just the structure of it, you're not coming to see this widescreen format. You're coming to see this claustrophobic feeling of what it's like for this particular character in this 4:3.
We're going to do a question in Zoom.
I've got a question here. Thanks for spending some time with us tonight and giving us your viewpoints and perspectives. Did you get a chance to see the news, the industry news about Guillermo del Toro coming out and saying he will never use AI? I was just wondering what you were thinking. I was helping develop a movie recently, and this issue came up over AI, and I'm kind of on the fence. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't use it because I may not need it. Also, a sales agent actually said that they're getting a lot of material, but it has no soul. So have you thought much about that, or are you using AI in your projects?
I think about it a lot. I had a very long conversation about it this afternoon with an AFF friend. At this stage, I have no use for it. It can't do anything that I can't do. And so I just don't see a point. It doesn't have the emotional background that I have. It doesn't have the smart-ass mouth that I have. It's not as feisty as I am. It doesn't have the history that I have. So I just can't see something that it can do that I can't. Now, granted, yes, will I go to ChatGPT sometimes? Absolutely. Do I tell it that it's fucking stupid? I totally do sometimes, just to get the aggression out. But at this point, for me, I guess I'm like, I mean, you could give me more information, but I just don't see what you can do that I can't, because my style of filmmaking, it's very atmospheric. It likes to take its time. It really wants you to get to know a character. And that's not what AI does. And I like things that are practical. I like things that feel kind of analog. So at this point, it's just another dude in this world that thinks it's better than me, and it's not.
Ouch. Before we close it out, it would be a sin to not talk about Unbound with David Bowie, which was ahead of its time, putting out very short form content. Tell me about that.
Oh gosh, so the last time I was in Austin was at South by Southwest in 2016. I had just finished studying fiction writing at the Writers Studio in New York, and I knew someone who was considering, how do you tell long-form stories on Instagram? Because Instagram had just given you a video option, but it was only 20 seconds. That's all you could put on Instagram at the time. There wasn't even stories yet. It was just 20-second videos. And so this particular friend was trying to figure out how to tell stories in that way. And at the same time, I had just happened to meet this, I think he was like a digital consultant of some kind for some artists at Warner Brothers. And I was getting ready to go to Paris for the summer. I was so young, and I was so vibrant and full of life and hope. And and so I was making a 20 seconds at a time. We were going to make this little series with my friend in Paris, and the digital consultant heard about it, and he said, I have this artist that has been wanting, his daughter keeps telling him to get into Instagram. Would you be interested in talking about it? And I'm like, yeah, like, why not? What else am I going to do? And he's like, cool, it's David Bowie. And then I was like it kind of, like, oh my God. Like, it was such a dream come true. But essentially, like, it just kind of snowballed, and then Sony brought me in, and they said, here, you can listen to the album once, and then you can come back with a pitch. And I was like, okay. And that's what I did, and I came back, and they were like, wow, this is better than we thought. We'll pass it on to Mr. Jones. And he said, this is art, let's do it. And that was like my first like real credit as a writer. And so we made this 16 episodic for his album, Black Star. And the night that we finished editing, he passed away. And so I have some notes where he saw some cuts, but he never got to see the finished thing. And I have a little gift from him that's signed that I hold on to very, very dearly. And everything else I kind of keep to myself just out of respect for him and the conversations and so on.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Jen, we have
one
more question.
What's that?
One more question.
Okay, one more question.
I thought the TV show you were going to do was a reboot of Downton Abbey, so I came prepared in the outfit, in costume. A friend of mine tricked me and said, this is a costume event, so anyway.
It is. It's optional.
Well,
We're promoting this.
Here I am, Downton Abbey reboot. I would love to hear more. First, thank you for bringing work to Texas, and you mentioned that you had a project that you were thinking, a series here based in Texas. I just was curious to hear more about that because I think all of us Texas actors are really interested in that. Thanks, Jen.
Sure. I made a short film in 2019 called Woodford County, which is set in Texas, but of course it was kind of one of my first things that I was ever doing entirely on my own, and so I didn't have money to get everybody to Texas. So we ended up shooting on a farm, kind of a horse farmland in the Berkshires, passed it off as Texas, but always knowing that I wanted to expand it into a feature at first, and I knew I wanted to shoot it on location. I knew it had to be Texas, and I wrote this feature, and it was like 160 something pages long, and I was like, oh my God. But I refused to cut. Like, I fell in love with these characters so deeply. I was like, okay, I want to do a limited series. And so I started planning it out that way, and I wrote this pilot and submitted it to Stowe, and so that's where we are right now. But I love this project so much. It's at the point where, I mean, at this stage, I only want to film it in Texas. I only want to make the project that I want to make. I want to tell this story about 1992 in a small town, and a woman whose adult daughter commits suicide, and the grief that she goes through, and the small town stories of like finding out who her father actually is. I grew up not knowing who my dad was, and so I had a lot of stories in my head about who he might be. And so I put all of that into this project, and I'm so in love with it, and I'm so loyal and dedicated to it that I won't make it unless I can make it properly. And so that's kind of where we are right now. How long that will take, I don't know, because the industry is in such flux. But if anybody knows Pedro Pascal or anybody in Texas who likes a slow burn, something that feels kind of like Mayor of Easttown meets Mystic River, but rural, like, Badlands with a little urban cowboy. Yeah.
I like it. I feel like you just baked a cake of awesomeness.
Let's eat cake.
Thank you so much. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
I got to do a little stretch. Does anybody else need to do like a little hip flexor here? Kind of work it out. Okay, so I'm so excited. I'm so excited for everything tonight. Our guest speakers are freaking awesome. So you might have heard of a guy, some have called him the master of horror, Scream franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street. His name's Wes Craven. Woo! There is a woman that is amazing that just fell into my life, and then just happened to work with him for 15 years. And I was like, you're amazing. I happen to have this group called AEB, and can I convince you to come share some of your BTS of working with Wes Craven and all the things? Her name is Feingold. Can you come up here? So you just recently moved to Austin.
Yes, I just moved over the summer.
So you're gonna have to put the microphone a little bit. There we go. You gotta almost eat it. What do you think of Austin so far? You moved from LA.
Yes, I love Austin. I went to school here for undergrad, so hook 'em, and loved the film school, and I love Austin as a town. Great people, great food.
Now, is it different? Now, like when you were here, there was something called a rainy street with like bars and homes, and now it's skyscrapers.
Yes, they were building the Frost building when I lived here before, so it dates me, but that the skyline has changed tremendously, and the amount of people in the town has changed a lot.
So tell us what we all want to know. How does a girl that grew up in Kansas City end up working for Wes Craven? Like, what is your backstory? Have you always been interested in film? I know the answers, but I'm just asking for you guys.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Kansas City, grew up a film lover, and knew from a very young age that all I wanted to do was make movies. So that was all I studied growing up. That was all I did in my spare time. Like when other kids were doing whatever after school, I was making movies with my friends. And so then the decision came for college, and I was just trying to decide between USC and UT, and fell in love with Austin and wanted to come here because knew I'd be in LA eventually. While at UT, I was part of a film group called the University Filmmakers Alliance and organized a film conference with them and had a bunch of Hollywood professionals come for a weekend, be judges in a student film festival, hold workshops, and Wes Craven was the headliner. I got to come. I stuck very close to him that weekend and stayed in touch with him after. And when I graduated and moved out to LA, I reached out to him and said, can I pick your brain on what I should do next? And so happened that he was starting up on a film and said, come be a PA. And I was like, great. And that was how I got my foot in the door.
Now, how did you stay in touch with him? Because I know a lot of people, will meet somebody of his caliber at events, but then they feel a little awkward on follow-up.
Yeah, I would just drop him lines every now and then. Like I kind of knew he was a bird watcher into birds, and like I would come across something and I knew he was into technology and stuff that I thought he would find interesting. And I didn't email him that much. It was probably a total of like 3 or 4 emails before I moved to LA, which over the course of like 2 years or a year and a half. And, just like, hey, saw this, thought of you, hope things are going well. Or like I saw him in the news about something, was like, oh, this is so cool, congrats. Just little things like that. So like I didn't fall off his radar.
How was he to work with? How was Wes Craven to work with?
He was amazing. So he became my mentor. He originally had been a professor, so it's in his nature just to be a teacher. So he really took me under his wing, and anything I had a question about, he would, like, if time permitted, stop to explain to me, or and kind of grew me to become his producer.
Was he a nice person?
Yes, he definitely was like the father/grandfather type, and so gentle and caring. Like every set, he would have a PA go around and take a Polaroid of every single person on set and write their name and position on it, and he'd keep that on a key ring. And in between like takes and setups, he would go through that and try to memorize every crew person like within the first 2 weeks. Which I mean, I've never seen another director care that much to try to know everyone's name.
That's amazing. It's people like that makes our industry have that magic, just fairy dust. And I think that's why people like him work for so long sometimes, because people want to be around them. They want to do favors. I mean, I get that aura from you. I feel like it rubbed off on you. And, what was your journey before Wes? You didn't go directly to working with Wes Craven.
I had like a few other PA jobs here and there doing commercials, music videos. My first PA job in LA was on a Cher music video, so I got to meet Cher like my first week in LA, which was pretty cool.
How do you randomly fall into a Cher music video?
You know what? It was one of my like family friends in Kansas City. Their neighbor had a commercial production company in LA, and they're like, "Here, you should reach out to him." And I did, and he was like, "Well, come be a PA." You know, it just takes like people knowing that you're looking and asking like, "Who do you know in LA that works in production?" And they, connect you.
Now, what projects are the most memorable that you've worked on?
Scream 4 was definitely one of the most memorable because when I was in high school, the Scream movies came out. I actually snuck into the first Scream and remember sitting on the aisle because the theater was packed, and I watched it sitting on the aisle. So that was like kind of full circle getting to produce the fourth one, and I was kind of the resident Scream expert on set. Like I had to basically memorize everything from the first 3 movies, and I made a Scream Bible so we knew like anything we were referencing that it was accurate, and anything with any of the character storylines that was like true, and the information that we knew about the Scream world that we stayed consistent.
What an amazing like full circle. Were you just like jumping out of your skin?
I mean, by that point, it was just, my everyday. But I remember there was like one night where there was thunderstorms. It was probably like 3 a.m, and Wes and I were up working on the script because sometimes when your location changes or other things happen, you have to rework the script. And if you don't have the writer on set, which Kevin Williamson was not available to be there with us, he did help a lot during it. But we had to make changes for the shoot the next day. And we're up writing, and there's this crazy thunderstorm going on, and and I just remember sitting there thinking, like, wow, like this is what I dreamed of, and like that to me, like I made it. I was like, great, I'm doing what I love. This is not working. This is a hobby that I've found a way to make as my living, and that to me was like my proudest moment of myself.
That's such an awesome story. What's interesting is what I like about Wes Craven films is he mixes fear with self-awareness. And like from behind the scenes, like how did he think about how audiences would react to his films?
Well, I think it's important in what she was talking about, pulling from your childhood. He was raised a fundamentalist Baptist, wasn't allowed to watch anything but Disney movies until he was in college. So he then saw this whole other world of films and was open to all this other literature that I think when he went to New York and he wanted to break into the film industry. He was working for an editor, and a producer came and was like, "You always talk about writing, why don't you go write something scary?" And he said, "Well, what do I know about anything scary?" He said, "You were raised fundamentalist Baptist, pull all the skeletons out of your closet." And that's how he came up with Last House on the Left. So, I think it is pulling from what you know, and, it's cathartic horror, whether it's in the writing or when you're watching it as an audience. It's definitely, you're going through trauma and you're overcoming it. And there was just a great article today that I saw on like how horror can help you overcome anxiety and other, childhood abuse and tons of things. So horror is great for you.
Okay, take a little dose of horror every night before bed, or for breakfast. When do we watch horror movies? When should we?
I mean, for to sleep well, I don't know if it's at night, but for them to be scariest, I think at night in the dark with the volume up as loud as you can take it.
You know what sucks is when I do that, I always wake up in the middle of the night and I need to use the restroom, and I'm like jumping out of my skin. I'm like, oh my God, this like someone's gonna break in. There's ghosts. Like something's in the toilet. This is.
So that means it was a good film.
So you did development for the Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes, right?
Yes, and I was on set for both Hills Have Eyes and Hills Have Eyes 2 for parts of them as well. Last House on the Left, we were shooting My Soul to Take at the same time, so I'd watch dailies every day after wrap, and we'd give notes, but I wasn't on set for that, but I was part of the development process and then post.
What was the development process like?
Well, that one, since it was a remake, we had to find a writer and director for it. And, you're constantly, when you're working for a production company, reading scripts, multiple scripts a day, and meeting with writers and directors and everything, so you're getting a great sense of the talent that's out there. So it's just trying to find that voice of, okay, well, who would be right to tell this story?
So, what was one of your most memorable moments from doing that development and meeting all those writers and directors? You had to read a lot of scripts.
Yeah.
Sometimes I imagine that would be kind of grueling too. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I had a 20-page rule. I'd read the first 20 pages all the way through, like wouldn't skim it, anything. And then if it had me still, I'd keep reading. If it didn't, I skimmed through the rest. And because you kind of know at that point, I mean, I would either stop reading completely because you can tell, can this person write? If the dialogue's derivative, or if they know what they're talking about. And then that was like my process. So I didn't get to the end on a lot of scripts because there's a lot that didn't get me past page 20.
First 20 pages is very important. You worked on kind of a big show on the Warner Brothers lot, an episodic, but you're like, screw this episodic.
Yeah, when I first got to LA, I took a job at a production company on the Warner Brothers lot and had a little golf cart I got to drive around in, eat in the commissary, all that cool stuff. And after a couple weeks, I knew it wasn't for me. I saw it was television, which I was open to work in film or TV at the time, and I saw the jobs that the executives there were doing, and I knew I didn't want those jobs. So I remember just going into HR and being like, I'm so sorry, but this isn't the right job for me, and thank you, but goodbye. So it took a lot for me to realize that and be willing to walk away from that when I didn't have another like steady income. I knew I could go back and be a production assistant on another film, so I was happy to do that, and even knowing it was only going to be for a month, but I knew I didn't want to be at the production company anymore. So that's something to always know, like, what is it that you truly want to do, and what are you going to be passionate about, and what's going to get you up every morning and make you feel like this isn't work, this is fun. And it's really hard to find, I know, but if you can find that, like, it's the best feeling in the world.
I love that story so much too. It's almost like you tell the universe the rules of your life, and when you're not willing to when you're willing to put up with something, it keeps coming at you. But when you're not, like, cool things come at you. I've seen it happen in my own life too. So it was just so moving when you told me that story. I'm going to open up to questions, but I just want to talk about Black Box too. You headed up that horror channel.
Yes, so there's a horror channel called Black Box TV on YouTube, and back in, I think it was 2012 maybe, YouTube decided to fund some channels because they wanted more premium content, and that was one of the channels that they gave money to, and they wanted X amount of scripted hours, X amount of unscripted hours, so I was a producer that came on to that. And it was a great experience. Like, it was grueling hours, but we worked with a ton of different writers and directors, making all these, like, this horror anthology shorts. And we shot a lot of them in Idlewild, California, which they weren't used to having film crews up there. But it was a really fun experience. But YouTube is a different medium for scripted horror. It doesn't work necessarily as well, just because you can't control what people are watching on, the size of screen, how loud they're listening. There are ways now that I think it can work, but we were experimental back then, and what works on a movie screen is not the same that works on a phone, and you have to play to that medium. So.
Yeah, I mean, people have short attention spans on these phones,
Yes.
like 3 seconds and you've lost them. I think I want to open it up to questions. Who has a question? I'll give Jess the microphone.
What was it like to work with Kathy? Do you know Kathy Conrad?
No, she was not involved on Scream 4.
She never showed up once?
So the executive producers that were on the first one, they did have a deal that they're involved with anything that comes after, but they don't necessarily have to do any work for it. So.
Okay, thank you.
It's
Thank
a
you.
great
Thank you for being here.
All right. Hello. I have a two-part question. The first part is, did you find Wes Craven's portrayal of himself in New Nightmare as an accurate portrayal of how he worked? And then more importantly, what kind of lessons, like that's a really interesting filmmaker to train and learn under, and I wonder how he influenced how you work ever since you worked with him, like what lessons you learned from him and just how to operate.
God, I have to go back to New Nightmare. It's been a while. I probably was. I mean, most of his cameos, he liked to be himself. So I would say it's probably pretty accurate. Yeah, it's been too long for me to remember. And then the second part of it was, what was the second part?
Like how did training under him influence how you work with other creatives and?
Yeah, well, after working with him and then going to work with multiple directors on Black Box and other things with Awesomeness TV and things later on, he taught me patience. He definitely had patience with people, but also wanted to get their best work out of them. And he had a way of just, being able to spot talent and give creative criticism in a way that he wasn't coming down on you, but he was helping you and rising you up, and that definitely takes practice. And he always used to say too, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." So work those long hours, and put your hours towards something that you can be proud of and that you want out there in the world.
All right, thanks for coming. I'm also from Kansas City, Missouri. And
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs, that's right, they won last night. And back to what the other director was saying about kind of bringing in from your own childhood, do you have any stories from maybe KC area or maybe Austin that you would like to bring in as like a horror movie or anything like that, or any stories in general you'd like to kind of tell?
I mean, for me, without getting too personal, it's more like places I would hear about, I would say. Like there was a place in Kansas that you grew up hearing about called Stoll, Kansas, that supposedly is a gateway to hell. That, we always talked in high school about, going there and filming stuff and whatnot. And I think every town has kind of those local horror legends that are fun to go explore, which most ghost hunter shows and things have. But as far as a more personal thing, I don't have anything at this time to share.
We're going to take one last question from Zoom.
Thank you very much. I had a little two-part question. I was very intrigued by what you said about YouTube, and I was wondering about the differentiating points you had with that experience, the immediacy that you can interact with the audience. They're in the comments. You don't have to wait for Comic-Con to get that kind of feedback. So did that affect your storytelling and the data that YouTube provides versus traditional? And the other second question was if you had thoughts on the vertical video short format, if that's something that intrigues you as a creative.
Yes, I mean, definitely again, this was over a decade ago when I was doing Black Box, but community was a very important part of it. And they did give us feedback immediately, and it did affect how we went forward, especially in the live shoots when they're kind of like, oh, we want to see over there, we want to do that. That's immediate feedback. But then once the first 3 scripted episodes went up, that was the first place we went, was to the community. What do you think? What would you like to see differently? Is this the good length? Were you engaged the whole time? So it was great to have that immediate feedback, and you have to use that community. It's definitely a different experience than in films where you have, your screenings and the feedback with the audience right away. That it's very similar setup and reading through all your cards, after a test screening. So it's very similar to that, but it's even more immediate. And in YouTube, you're working so fast, you can make the changes very quickly. But once it's out there, you didn't pull it back down and re-edit it. So. Sorry, the second part real fast. Verticals. Yes, I think verticals are on the rise. There's definitely stuff that you can play with in that. And I think it's a fun place to try things out.
I want, before we give Carly a round of applause, which we're going to do, I'm going to keep her after the round of applause because I want to tell her a ghost story. But first, let's give Carly a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and stories with us. It's just amazing to hear from the behind the scenes and get these little insights, and hopefully they help you spark an idea with your next project. All right, so anybody want to hear a good ghost story?
Always.
Okay, so it's about the Pershing House here, where you are sitting. It was once the site of a mill for the Austin Lumber Company, and it was actually the first two-story building, the members area, in Austin in the 1940s. But the Texas lumber industry, it was hazardous. Mills and logging and operations, they involved long hours, heavy machines, saws, and there was significant risk. So there was a lot of deaths. And today, some people believe they see the ghost of a former mill worker. That's weird. Okay, I just heard something very strange. And I think I might have even, okay, no, that's not planned. Can you guys, that's weird audio. Anyway, can you still hear me? Okay, I really do not know what's happening. Okay. Jess, did you do this? No? Okay. Anyways, like I have seen, I think, the ghost of this mill worker. What is happening right now? Oh my God. Oh.